Hey, with your evening story channel, I post new interesting stories every day. Subscribe and click the bell to not miss it. Ethan couldn't believe what was happening. This couldn't be happening. He reread the message from his wife again. She said she'd met the love of her life and had decided to stay with him. Don't call, don't look. I'm hurting too. I'm not ironclad, but I can't help it. I'm not coming back. It's for the kids. Ethan shifted his gaze from the phone screen, where the message was still glowing, to the shelf. On the wall were 3 different children's cups, sent by his wife from that damned foreign country where she worked for some agricultural plantation, like so many women. Ethan's wife had gone to work out of their town where it paid, so they did live here, him and their 3 kids, and his mother-in-law got a little extra. He was lucky with his mother-in-law, by the way, though it used to seem like he'd turn off the phone with his wife, too. Ethan put it down on the table and went into the bathroom. From the mirror, a vaguely familiar man looked at him with the look of a raving lunatic. So he thought, let's put it all in order, just like my father taught me when I was a kid. Yes, my dad, who lives in another country, would be very helpful if he were nearby. But he's far away, and I don't want to upset him. His parents lived until his mom died. Soul to soul, grow up to be his sister. Ethan's thoughts ran like players on a soccer field with no purpose, clinging to each other but fast. So, what do we have an apartment on credit? Earnings at the level of not starving to death. Mother-in-law, children 3, they are now sleeping and waiting for mom, hoping for her return soon. She wrote that she's renewing her contract and didn't come on vacation. He dialed his wife's number. No connection, then his mother-in-law's. Kathy answered right away, even though it was late at night. Is something wrong, Ethan? Something's wrong. I barely recognized Ethan's own voice. She left us. I don't know what's wrong with you. Hold on, I'll be right there in 20 minutes. What he had always loved and respected his mother-in-law for was her ability to never lose her head. She was a former electronic engineer. In that distant past, where abroad saw everything exclusively in the movies and on TV. So, mentally imitating the unknown psychologist, he began to parse the situation from the beginning. And everything began several years ago. His wife's best friend went to Europe for 3 months. She came back tanned and strong and brought the amount that was enough for her family for the whole winter. It's a big family. Ethan remembered the night he and his wife had come to visit them in great detail. The layout is the usual seasonal field work harvesting. If it's apples, the work boils down to buying rotten, spoiled ones. You stand near the transporter and pick out the rotten ones. The rest rolls into crates. The crates are packed, netted, and shipped to whatever country you want. Or peaches, they have to be put in special crates, each one by hand. It's tedious, laborious work, and in the sun, and not everyone can take it. Those who are drawn in get good money, deduct for housing, food, and overalls, mittens, and caps from the sun for free. People go there from an hour from all over Europe. It turns out to be such a common continental snow. They dance if they have strength, walk at the weekend. And the main thing is that they don't cheat. Intermediary firms one day. Log cabins and their money rolled away. Only those who seriously work embassies, visas, insurance, all as it should. After several months of arguments, discussions, calls, meetings, quarrels, Clara decided to go for just 1 season. And this is the outcome of her trip. Ethan looked for reasons in himself and his family. They'd lived an ordinary life. They met, liked each other. Love, if there was any, had cooled off quietly. 4 months after their wedding, they had twins. To Ethan's surprise, none of the nieces in the driveway voiced the slightest disapproval. He worked in a design office, building cottage towns, and the earnings were enough. Ethan and Clara wanted a daughter, but they got both a daughter and a son. At first glance, the children looked very similar, but at the second glance it was clear that they were a boy and a girl. Ethan remembered that they had twins in their family, and his wife had fathered twins. And then there was also Sebastian. So worries and expenses immediately added up. And things got worse. Then the recession hit. They started fighting. They loved the kids. Both or neither. Ethan remembered one very characteristic episode when Clara hit her eldest son hard for breaking hot milk. Then he had just twisted her with a hold and rolled her with water from the faucet. She was very apologetic about it, but the fear in her son's eyes didn't go away for a long time. Or was I winding myself up now? Thought Ethan before the mother-in-law came in the lock with a grinding key and lingering. Or the hinges are still not coming. Hands to grease the front door, thought Ethan. Kathy, or just Kathy, as the grandchildren called her, came in, singing an old song with her. Mother-in-law did not undress, went into the kitchen, lowered herself on a stool, shook her head. They said the rain was not answering. They sat and were silent. Then they heard footsteps. The daughter came in, saw them sleepily, smiled, and went to the bathroom to potty. Then she came back into their kitchen, stuck Kathy in her cold coat, and almost fell asleep. Ethan carried her to bed. In the morning, Clara deigned to answer exactly what she had said to her mother. Ethan couldn't hear, but his mother-in-law's gaze became that of a mother-in-law setting off missiles on their way to intercept low-flying targets. Ethan had seen those pictures in the family album. I don't have any more. Daughters only have a son and grandchildren. You understand me? He understood the kids. They said Mom wasn't coming. The eldest son assumed she'd drowned on the Titanic. Youngest, Sebastian, cried. Adriana started up behind him. Sebastian stopped quickly. After the smack David gave him, he'd do more than look around. And then all three of them looked at each other and asked for a dog. Ethan promised to buy one. So in the house appeared a golden retriever Jack, mischievous and hooligan, immediately with Grisha favored Adriana on the doll. Life went on with the eternal question of what to do. It didn't go anywhere. They somehow sat down to budget planning, savvy supplies melted away. Jack and the kids constantly wanted something to eat. Fall and winter were ahead, not the most active season for Ethan's work. His mother-in-law worked as a tutor, pushing high school physics and doing term papers to the students. They were making some ends meet without the money Clara sent. It wasn't easy, but they managed. Buying a new washing machine had to be postponed. Closed while there were second-hand stores. They canceled them right away, and they did it in silence. A new life was beginning. Ethan got a job in another office as a designer. He could draw advertising layouts. Kathy practically moved in with them, taking care of the children. The boys' father saw them more and more on weekends. He left in the morning when they were still asleep and came back in the evening when they were asleep. He sent out and posted his resume on all the websites, but no response yet. He was tired. He only had one joy. 4 kinds of developing children, to be exact. And Jack was a joy. But somewhere inside, something was hurting. Finally, a friend of his wife's who'd come back from a stint on the payroll brought clarity. She'd gotten drunk with an agronomist from France and gone to his homeland. He broke the contract and disappeared into the mist. A group of workers, some invited, some condemned, but they judged and forgot. Our friend was afraid to look Ethan in the eye, but he felt nothing but emptiness. This is how it is, he thought. Jack yanked hard on the leash, and then he rounded on someone. And that someone turned out to be sharing a bow. She was being held in the arms of a girl. He looked at her closely. Ethan found her very pretty and attractive. He especially liked her curly red hair dislodged from under her hat. Don't be afraid, Jack doesn't bite. And no faith dangerous that the enemy will be stabbed to death, she said, and laughed ringingly. Her laugh was a good one. Only good people laugh like that. They turned away and went their separate ways. They saw each other again a couple days later. Ethan and the kids were riding bicycles. The boodle owner was parking the car. Apparently because the space wasn't very big, she couldn't fit in. Ethan helped her. Let's at least get to know each other, he suggested. My name is Ethan, and this is the rest of our team. David, Sebastian, Adriana. Well, you already know Jack, and my name is Miranda. Turns out she's the director of an architectural firm looking for new people. The firm was servicing Western clients. There was a lot of work to be done, and people who do not like Waldemar's, but better than Dorothy's. But there was a catastrophic lack of comfort and beauty. The man showed her his portfolio, told her what he thought and how he saw his work. In general, already in 3 days he sat in the new office and molded on the computer. A 2-story mansion in the style of Victorian England, tying it to all the communications of the 21st century. Miranda turned out to be a very competent professional and a very private person, but something about her was appealing. Later he found out that it was mutual. She drove Ethan home after work more than once. They lived in the neighborhood, and each time she marveled at how Ethan bought groceries and managed not to confuse what went with what. Kathy had seen her son-in-law get a ride from a woman a couple of times, but she never said anything to him about it. What was there to say? She and Miranda only spoke to each other on the job. She was punctiliously reserved and nothing more. But more and more Ethan caught himself thinking about her. He liked her manner, her smile. It was correct, very genuine. And the man also caught the wistfulness in her gaze a couple times when she looked at his children. And so a few more months passed, and then Ethan and Miranda went on a business trip to the country where their new villa was being built. After work, they decided to sit in a restaurant. It was very noisy there. They went for a walk in the park, wandered around the city at night for a long time. They talked about life. Miranda told Ethan her story. She was born in a small town. Her mom was a librarian. Her dad worked as a turner at a mechanical plant. The girl came to town and went to university. She had enough knowledge. Her service was the whole library, left as an inheritance from the dispersed missile units. She met a foreign businessman on the internet. She married him, but as it turned out, he did not want a child. And in time, she realized her mistake. They had to break up. She returned to the city, worked, and became the director of the very bureau where she works now. The rest can be told for a long time, and you can tell it very briefly. At the airport a week later, an honor guard was waiting for them, hung around Ethan's neck with joyful squeals and squeals of laughter and barking. Miranda looked at them and smiled. Then they met Kathy's eyes and smiled at each other. Dinner all together already, the presents had been unwrapped already. Flying helicopter had been hit and broken. Already stopped being afraid of the talking doll. Jack already celebrated his truck with a crane, and mother-in-law twirled in a new shawl. And then the children went to bed, strictly instructed Kathy to come back tomorrow to go for a walk in the park with them. And Ethan and Miranda stood at the window and could not part. Suddenly a rustle distracted them. All 4 faces stared at them slyly. Daddy, let Miranda live with us. And they all laughed. Now they are the full family again, and children are wondering who will be the 4th sibling. And only Jack doesn't care. They have long ago learned to divide the bones, absolutely without quarrels.